Hello and welcome back once again to the Wrestling Group. I am your host Ryan, and today we are going to be taking a look at AEW All in Texas, which is on tonight. So I didn't actually realise this, but if you are watching from the UK, AEW All In starts at 8 p.m. Obviously the pre-show will be on earlier, but the main card is 8 p.m. So don't think what I did originally, that it was going to be at 1 o'clock in the morning. So having said that, what we're going to do today is have a little look at the matches that are on the card, and I'm going to give you my predictions. And of course, as always, feel free to play along too and leave your predictions in the comment section below, and then we can compare. Obviously, after the show, we can compare and see who got more right, you or me. So as always, don't forget to give us a like, drop us a comment, and of course, subscribe to the Wrestling Group today. So we'll start. There's 9 matches on the main card. There's 3 for the pre-show. 2 of the matches on the pre-show, to be honest, I'm just going to skip because I've got no interest in them. I might stick it on in the background while I'm getting all my knickknacks and snacks and drinks and stuff ready for the main show. But we will have a quick talk about FTR versus the Outrunners. Now, this is a rematch from a match they had last week, the week before, on AEW Collision. A fantastic match. Obviously, FTR don't do average matches, do they? You know what I mean? They do some of the best tag team wrestling that is in the world of professional wrestling, not just in AEW. And the Outrunners are so over right now. And the storyline's obviously been building since FTR turned heel. And obviously FTR and the Outrunners were a 4-way team. Is it a 4-way team? Or is it a 2-team? 8-man team? 8-man tags? 4-man team. Anyway, the team together and called themselves the FT Runners, didn't they? Only a few months back, obviously. And then FTR turned on Adam Copeland. Which gave us FTR versus the Outrunners recently on Collision. Now they're going to be doing a rematch, which I'm a bit surprised they've decided to stick it on the pre-show and not the main card. But to be honest, the main card is that stacked, unless you're just going to extend the time of the actual pay-per-view. There isn't really much space for it, I'm afraid. But yeah, it should be a good match, like the one on Collision was. But see, I feel like with this one, we're going to get the Outrunners get the win, because I can't see why we'd have FTR go back-to-back wins against the Outrunners, unless literally the next step is going to be the AEW Tag Team Championships. I feel like with FTR, we always get a nice set of trio matches, so I feel like this will stretch to the trios. So I think we'll get FTR losing this one. So I think obviously the Outrunners are going to win. FTR lose, and that'll tie them up at 1 apiece, and then maybe at the next pay-per-view, maybe at All Out, we will get FTR versus the Outrunners one more time to complete the trilogy, like what they did with obviously the Briscoes in 3 of the greatest matches in the history of tag team wrestling. So yeah, I'm going to go with the Outrunners to pick up the win this time. As like I say, I think we're going to get a trilogy. So we'll move on now to the main card. And you know what? I find this one of the hardest AEW cards to predict. And to be honest, that is exactly what you want when it comes to professional wrestling. I don't like it where you have Goldberg versus Gunther for the world title, which is obvious that Goldberg's never going to win in a million years. Like, why am I going to tune in to watch something I know is already going to happen? So whereas with this card, we have so many matches that could go either way. And that is originally what attracted me to the likes of AEW and the likes of New Japan Pro Wrestling, is not everything is as easy as it seems. So we'll go to the main card, and we will start with Adam Cole versus Kyle Fletcher for the AEW TNT Championship. Now, unfortunately, when Daniel Garcia won the TNT Championship, I was a big fan of Danny Garcia. I was glad that he finally got a singles title. He was on the rise. The fans got right behind him. And then his run was really flat until he faced Adam Cole. And they did a good build-up for this match between Cole and Garcia. And then, obviously, Adam Cole beats Danny Garcia and becomes the TNT champion. Now, since obviously Cole's had the title, he's defended it multiple times. We've had some really good matches. And then we've had the slow build for Kyle Fletcher versus Adam Cole for the TNT championship. Now, if we're looking at Kyle Fletcher, if you're talking at one of the fastest rising stars in AEW in the last year, he's improved so much in the ring. He looks like a star. He acts like a star. You know, having the main focal point of the Don Callis family is brilliant. You know, I loved Aussie Open, and I thought they were a great tag team, and I thought that is where we were going to have it stay. Like, I thought they were going to stay as tag team. I thought we were going to be talking about Aussie Open the way we talk about FTR, the way we talk about the Young Bucks, the way we talk about the Hardys. You know, you talk about them as maybe not the Hardys because they've had single runs, but you know what I mean, with obviously FTR and the Young Bucks. Like, they've remained loyal as tag teams all the way through. I was expecting Aussie Open to go the same way. And then obviously Kyle Fletcher, when I won the Ring of Honor Television Championship last year, had a really good run and started to up his game. And then obviously going into the feud with Will Ospreay, he basically just became a star pretty quick. So, you know, with this one, I'm going to pick Kyle Fletcher. I think Adam Cole's had a decent run. I'm glad Adam Cole got to pick up a singles title in AEW, because obviously he was challenging for the AEW World Championship at All In 2 years ago, which he didn't win. And then I feel like that story obviously didn't play out the way they wanted it to originally, because then Adam Cole ended up injured for over a year. Obviously wasn't able to be on All In last year. And then you've got Kyle Fletcher, who was against Adam Cole in the pre-show 2 years ago at All In London at Wembley Stadium, where they lost the tag team titles to Better Than You Baby, as it was then, Adam Cole and MJF. They lost the Ring of Honor Tag Team Championships to them. Last year he was involved in a big multi-man tag team match, wasn't he? But this will be his first singles match at an All-In pay-per-view, and it'd be great if he could pick up the win and take that TNT Championship with him. Like I say, Adam Cole's done brilliant for the TNT title. He's done brilliant in building up, helped to build up Kyle Fletcher. I wouldn't say building up, because obviously Kyle's done a lot of that himself, but he's helped to build him up to get him ready for a singles title in AEW. So I'm going to pick Kyle Fletcher for the win on this one. So we'll move on from this, and we shall go to the Hate Syndicate versus Jet Speed versus the Patriarchy for a triple threat tag team match for the AEW World Tag Team Championship. So obviously we have the dominating tag team champions who won the belts back in January, if I remember right, where they beat Private Party very, very easily, and have pretty much dominated the tag team division since. And as their music says, they hate people, and that is exactly what they've been doing. They have been hating tag teams up and down the company. But we've seen them come face to face with Jet Speed lately, which is obviously the tag team of Kevin Knight and Speedball Mike Bailey, both who previously worked in TNA and came over and then started to team together in AEW. You know, we've seen them come together as a tag team, but then like they've really hit it off. They've done really well as a team together. You know, sometimes when they just throw two guys together that don't, you know, obviously normally wrestle together, they've not come in as a tag team together, or don't really do a lot of tag team wrestling themselves. When they throw them together, not always does it work. You know, we've seen it for years where it hasn't come off, but then sometimes you do get a really good team, and I feel like Jet Speed has been that for AEW over the last couple of weeks. We've seen Kevin Knight and Speedball come together as a tag team and look really, really good together. And then obviously we have Christian Cage and Nick Wayne from the Patriarchy. You know, Christian Cage is one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. He's a phenomenal character, especially. He's one of them that I feel like is famous for his time in WWE. Obviously, they helped put him on the map, but he's better outside of WWE, if that makes any sense. Like, his time in TNA was much better than his time in WWE, and then his time obviously since in AEW, for me personally, has been the best of his whole entire career. And Nick Wayne is only just turned 20. He shares his birthday with me on the 10th. He's just turned 20. He is the current Ring of Honor television champion. He's just wrestled in New Japan for the first ever time for Best of Super Juniors. So he's only up. He's definitely a future star in AEW. So to be honest, again, it's another one that can go any way. It's hard to pick this one again. Like, normally I'd just go hit syndicate, win and retain. Because that's what they've been doing literally since January. And they are a monster tag team, where you look at it and you think, I can't see like a legit tag team coming in and taking the belt off them. They work so well together. Well-oiled machine, as they like to say. Two of the best pure athletes that AEW has, and they're both, well, Shelton's just turned 50. I think Bobby's not far behind him, maybe 47, 48. They are two of the older wrestlers in the company, but they're two of the best pure athletes they have right now. But having said that, we've seen Shelton Benjamin versus Kevin Knight versus Nick Wayne last week. And Kevin Knight actually pinned Shelton Benjamin. So we've seen that, obviously, they are taking this very seriously. They are looking to become AEW tag team champions, and they've not even been in the company a year. I think they come in a couple of months back, didn't they? So they've not been in the company a year, and they could effectively become tag team champions straight away. And then obviously we've got Christian, who's one of the best, like say, one of the cleverest minds in pro wrestling, should we say. He's very smart. He's very good at capitalizing on opportunities. And then we've got, the rising star of Nick Wayne. So I don't feel like it's as simple. Plus, with it being a triple threat as well, because I've been focused on for the last couple of months thinking, well, who legit takes the belt off Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin? And maybe, just maybe, doing it in a triple threat is the way to do it, so that neither one of them actually gets pinned. But see, I could see it going any of the ways. We could have Kevin Knight and Speedball take the belts, because the faces, they could come out with the tag belts. They could reign for a couple of months, and then they could easily drop them to, say, like a Christian Cage and Nick Wayne tag team, or even a heel FTR. FTR are heels. Eventually, they're going to go for the tag team belt somewhere down the line. So maybe we get Jet Speed and FTR somewhere down the line. And then you've got the patriarchy, like say, you could have the Hurt Syndicate literally dominating. You could have, I don't know, say Bobby like takes out Speedball, and then Christian literally flings him outside and pins him. You know what I mean? I could see that being a thing as well. So I could see them coming away with the tag belts. And it'd be interesting to see if Killswitch does return back to AEW in sometime in the near future. But having said that, it's very hard for me to back anything other than a Hurt Syndicate win. So I am going to do that. I'm going to back the Hurt Syndicate to retain the AEW tag team titles, as I don't think every title is going to change hands tonight. So we'll go from that, and we will look at next. I'll tell you what, we will look at the women's Casino Gauntlet match. So we have two Casino Gauntlet matches, where they'll get future shots at the World Championships. Obviously, we've got the women's for the AEW Women's World Championship, and we've got the men's for the AEW Men's World Championship. And so obviously it starts with two guys in the ring, and then obviously the longer the match goes on, the more people come out, the more people get involved. But obviously the match is ended by a single pinfall or submission. Now the women's Casino Gauntlet match, I'm pretty sure we only have two confirmed, which is Chris Statlander, who has the number one, and of course Megan Bayne, who has the number two. Normally in these type of matches you get returns, you get surprise entrants. We might see one or two Joshi wrestlers from Stardom or New Japan. I think Chris Statlander versus Megan Bayne will be an interesting start. Both two powerhouses. Without knowing who's going to be in this, I feel like it's hard to predict the winners, which is what I do like, and I love the rush of waiting for someone's music to hit. For me personally, I would give this to Athena. I haven't watched Ring of Honor yet, so I don't actually know if she still is the Ring of Honor Women's Champion or not. I hope so. I hope she defeated Thunder Rosa. I don't feel like Thunder should be the one to take the belt off her. I feel like Deonna Purrazzo should, or Billy Starks. But I'd put Athena in this, and I'd have Athena go over. But that's just me personally, and I think Athena is the greatest women's wrestler in the world right now. So that is who I would pick. Obviously, going based on just who he knows in the match, is for me it'd be Chris Statlander. So I mean, I know we don't know many, but I would pick. My pick would be Athena. And if it's not Athena, then I think it should be Chris Statlander. And I think it'd be dead interesting if Chris won via some help from the Death Riders, because we've seen her get this victory to become the number one entrant via some help from the Death Riders. So it would be interesting to see where that story is going to end up going. So we'll go from one to the next. We'll go to the men's casino gauntlet match next, and we know Mark Briscoe is number one, we know MJF is number two, and we know Mystico is also going to be in the match, but we don't know at what point. Again, same situation. The winner will get a future start at the AEW Men's World Championship. There's no confirmed date, so it's not like with the Owen Hart ones where the winners get the shots at All In. That's not necessarily the case. It just says future. So we don't know whether they're going to announce them ahead of time or whether to give them the opportunity to pick themselves. That hasn't been specified yet. We just know it's somewhere down the line. So again, it's one pinfall or submission to get the victory. I feel like obviously we're going to start with Mark and MJF. MJF said he's not going to let this match go too long. He wants to end it while there's just two of them in the ring. So I expect MJF to quickly try and put the moves on Mark, try and get a pin or submission quite early. Mystico, I'd assume, probably is going to be the next one out. To obviously stop MJF doing that, because they've had their situation go on. We might even get Mark and Mystico teaming up again to try and take MJF out. But see, I feel like this spot should be held for someone who's going to be returning. Like, I feel like Jay White should win this match, or Darby Allin. I don't feel like, I know MJF obviously hasn't been around the Men's World Championship, but I don't feel like he needs this to get into the Men's World Championship. Also, I don't know, I find it hard with MJF because you never really know what he's doing at any one particular time. Like, we could see the Hurt Syndicate at some point come out and help MJF get the victory. Like, that was the whole idea, wasn't it? So MJF could help the Hurt Syndicate retain the titles against Jet Speed and the Patriarchy, and then we could get the Hurt Syndicate then retain the favour and help MJF win this. Plus, if Hangman becomes the AEW World Champion, then Hangman versus MJF is just printing money, baby. And I'll just talk myself into giving MJF the win. No, I'm going to stick with this. I feel like a surprise return of either Jay White or Darby Allin gets the victory. And my preference, of course, would be Jay White, because I feel like it's sooner rather than later. Jay White needs to return, and he needs to start picking up some titles in AEW. He's the first ever, what do they call it? I forget the word now. But he's held all the belts in New Japan. He was the first ever to hold all the men's singles titles in New Japan Pro Wrestling. So I'll give it to Jay White. So we'll move on next to the Ops, which is Katsuyori Shibata, Powerhouse Ops, Samoa Joe, versus the Death Riders in Claudio Costanelli, Wheeler Yuta, and of course Gabe Kidd, who has just come in to take over from Pac at the time being. I really enjoyed Gabe being involved in the Death Riders. I think he's definitely more suited for the Death Riders than what he is with Bullet Club. I'd like to see Gabe come in full-time as a full-time member of Death Riders, a full-time member of the AEW roster. Although I do think that New Japan have big plans for him in the next coming years. He is, in fact, my prediction to win the G1 Climax this year and get a shot at Zack Sabre Jr. for the World Championship. But in terms of this match, if we'd had the Ops actually defend these titles before now, I'd have said the Ops were going to lose and drop the belts back to the Death Riders. But to be honest with you, I'd be really annoyed if they did, as the Ops have not defended the titles not once since they've won them. And they've won them back in, was it about March? So obviously they beat the Death Riders for the titles. And then I've done nothing with them since. They come out with them every week, but they don't defend them. So I feel like if Death Riders take the belts back, the Ops as a team, one, should disband them because it becomes really, really pointless. And two, it just seemed like there was no point in putting the belts on them in the first place. So I would have said Death Riders if the Ops should have been defending them, but as the Ops have not defended the titles not one time, I'm going to say that the Ops win here and retain. To be honest, my original thought was going to be that Hook would screw Samoa Joe out of the tag belts and then join with the Death Riders. But again, I can't see that happening because the simple fact is Hook's not been on TV at all since returning, and the Ops have not, defended the titles once. So I'm going to give the Ops the chance to actually defend the titles and retain them. So there you have it. I'm going with the Ops. So up next, I'm going to go with Swerve Strickland and Will Ospreay versus the Young Bucks. So in this tag match, if Ospreay and Strickland lose, they can never challenge. Well, not never. Sorry, they cannot challenge the AEW World Championship for a whole year. And if the Young Bucks lose, they will be stripped of their EVP titles. Now, a lot of people online seem to be thinking this is pretty straightforward. That obviously the Young Bucks are going to lose and then stop being on-screen EVPs. I don't necessarily think it's as simple as that. One, you've got Ospreay and Strickland, who, yes, are both phenomenal. Two of the best talents in the world of professional wrestling right now as single stars. Tag teaming for the third match. So obviously they've not tag teamed that long. The Young Bucks, on the other hand, have tag teamed for over 20 years, 2 decades. They are also brothers, which does help. They have literally won tag team titles in every major professional wrestling company, bar the sports entertainment ones. They're a well-oiled tag team. They've beaten bigger men before. And not only that, it also gives AEW a way to pivot if they didn't want to put the tag belt, the AEW World title on either Ospreay or Strickland for the next year. It gives them an option to not do that with all fans going, or why are they just keeping those two away from the main event scene? Again, if Hangman does win the AEW World Championship, it would be interesting to see how Strickland would react if he already can't challenge Hangman for the title. I know they're starting to push past that storyline of them being, enemies. And I feel like, to be honest with you, by the end of this year, we're going to get Hangman Page and Swerve Strickland as AEW Tag Team Champions together. But that is for another podcast. So I don't think it's as simple as what people are making out online. And I also feel like, as well, as if Bucks do lose and they have the EVP stripped, they're in the storyline, obviously they're still going to be in real life, but in storyline, so they're not going to be able to pull the weight and stuff. Well, as heels, where do they then go from there? I don't feel like they'll turn faces again anytime soon, at least anyway. So their whole thing has been sort of cowardly heels in a way, where it's been they've managed to swear things, if no pun intended. They tend to put a lot of things in their own favour. So, I mean, if they then stop doing that, where do they go from there? Because they're not going to be dominating heels, are they? So, for me, do you know what? For me, I'm going Young Bucks win. I'm going Young Bucks win. It causes an issue between Swerve and Will. We'll get them two face off again at the next pay-per-view, which possibly is All Out. And we still get the Young Bucks using their EVP titles to help them. Because, to be honest with you, I don't see where the Young Bucks go otherwise. And that's why. And I feel like it also gets AEW's main event scene is the best in the world right now. If you look at the numbers and names of people that could be classed as main eventers in AEW, it's second to none. So you need a reason to take some of them names out for a short period of time, booking wise, without people going, they're just keeping these two down. So to be able to do that, a stipulation like this works. So I'm going with the Young Bucks to win. So I think that only leaves us with, it leaves us with 3 matches. Up next, we'll quickly look at, I didn't realise how long this video was going to last. We're going to look at Timeless Toni Storm versus Mercedes Moné for the AEW Women's World Championship. We've got Mercedes is still undefeated in AEW. She's not lost a single match. A singles match in AEW. She's undefeated. She's collected a collection of championships from around the world. The only one that she did drop was the New Japan Strong Women's Championship, which she lost in a triple threat match and wasn't pinned. And obviously that wasn't actually in AEW, that was classed as New Japan. And then we've had Timeless Toni Storm is the only 4-time AEW Women's World Champion. She has been the face of the AEW Women's Division now for the past 2 years. She's been exceptionally well. She's turned into one of the best characters in the history of women's wrestling. She's gone from basically being overlooked in one company to becoming an absolute megastar in the next company, and that is through her own hard work and dedication, especially to this character that she's doing right now. As Timeless Toni Storm, it is the biggest women's match that you could put in the world of wrestling right now, not just in AEW. People take offense to that, but to be honest with you, if you're watching this and you've got 26 minutes in, the likelihood is that you are an AEW wrestling fan, and you're probably going to agree with me. I doubt you listen to this far in and you're going to be a WWE fan and then take offense to it. But I don't feel like there's another match in the world, literally in the world, in wrestling right now, in women, that is bigger than Timeless Toni Storm versus Mercedes Moné. There's the holders of both of AEW's Women's Championships, and the CBS for Mercedes, and obviously the Women's World for Timeless Toni Storm. And again, this is another 50-50. Like, where did they go with this booking? Mercedes, like I say, has not lost a match in AEW, so the only person that I can see really being able to beat her would, in fact, be Toni Storm. She is the top women's wrestler in AEW. She's at the very top of her game. She's the only 4-time women's wrestler, AEW Women's World Champion. So it makes sense if it was to be Toni. And that would eventually beat Mercedes. Plus, we don't need Mercedes to hold both of AEW's women's titles, unless, of course, they do similar to what WWE do, where they have them vacate the lower one, which for me, it sort of diminishes that mid-card title a bit, where they go, oh yeah, I don't need this now because I'm the world champ. I don't like it when they do that, so hopefully that isn't what will be the case. But at the same time, we don't need to see, as great as Mercedes has been since she come into AEW, we don't need to see Mercedes wrestling for the TBS and wrestling for the women's in one night. And because we have a massive roster of so many talented women, so many that are coming into their own. We've got Julia Hart not long returned. She's still young. She's got a bright future ahead of her. The likes of Willow, Chris, they still haven't become AEW Women's Champions, World Champions. They've both been TBS, obviously. And then we've got the likes of Queen Aminata and stuff coming up. We've got the Toxic Spider, Thelka, as well. She's not uncommon. She's settled in really well. So there's so many talented women that we don't need one woman to hold up both belts. I feel like that'll stall the division. So for me, on that note, I'm going to say Timeless Toni Storm defeats Mercedes Moné and retains the AEW Women's Championship. So up next, we're going to look at Jon Moxley vs Hangman Page in a Texas death match for the AEW World Championship. Now, I do believe this will be the main event, but I'm going to speak about it before the next match, just as the next match is the match I'm excited most for at this pay-per-view. So, of course, this is a rematch from 2 years ago. We had a Texas death match between Hangman and Jon Moxley, when Hangman Page choked Jon Moxley out with the chains over the rope, dangling him to the outside. And of course, Jon Moxley since has become the biggest thing in the men's division in the whole of AEW history. He is the only AEW men's 4-time world champion. He picked up the title, defeating former best friend Bryan Danielson, kicking him out of, at the time, the BCC, creating the Death Riders, making it a more brutal and violent faction than even what BCC was. turn them completely heels, literally dominating AEW. It's one of the most talked about storylines of the year. And every time people doubt Jon Moxley and they think that, Adam Copeland's going to win the title or Swift Strickland's going to win the title or whoever else is going to, Samoa Joe or whoever's going to face Mox and come away with the belt, Moxley always retains. And I feel like it's going to be interesting. We've had the rejuvenation and rebirth of Hangman Page, putting him back into the main event scene, having him turn into more of a face again. The fans are really behind him. You had the fans that were saying he was one of the most boring wrestlers going only 2 years ago. And now look, every fan is behind Hangman Page as he faces off against Jon Moxley for the AEW World Championship. And of course, it's another Texas Death Match. AEW do great wrestling when it comes to the likes of the Texas Death Matches. We've seen obviously Hangman face Swerve Strickland in the Texas Death Match as well, which had a lot of blood, gore, drinking blood, all sorts in that match, which was, of course, phenomenal as well. Again, this is another 50-50 one. Every time you think that Jon Moxley's going to lose the belt, he doesn't. So are we going to see that again? Is Hangman's story going to end with him once again becoming the AEW World Champion? No, he hasn't held it for a couple of years now. We know there's going to be shenanigans. We know the Young Bucks are going to get involved. The Death Riders are going to get involved. Claudio, Gabe, Wheeler. I think the Ops are going to get involved. I think Swerve and Will Ospreay are going to get involved. I think there's going to be so many people getting involved in this. And I just don't know, to be honest with you, where it's going to go. Every time I feel like Mox is going to lose and then get to the day of the pay-per-view. Like, if you know me by now, if you know anything about me by now, I am the biggest Jon Moxley fan in the world. No one likes Jon Moxley more than I do. And even when I go, do you know what, I think he's going to drop the belt, and I'm okay with that, and I feel like, the company can progress and blah, 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 and everything else, gets to the day of, and I'm like, Jon Moxley best not fucking lose that belt, because I will be fuming. I want Mox to retain every time. And I know even if I go Hangman Page here, I know as soon as the pay-per-view starts, I'll be like, Jon Moxley best keep that belt. I feel like it's hard as well, because I do feel like we can go, like I say, like if Jay White wins, then we get Jay White versus Jon Moxley. Jay White is obviously a face now. Jon Moxley is a heel. So it'd be interesting to see them face off where it's flipped the other way around from last time they faced. Jay White for me should be AEW World Champion. Or we could then get Hangman, obviously, versus Jay White, where we could have Jay White easily turn back heel, as I feel like he's much better as a heel than he is a face. So they have a massive history as well, so it'd be interesting to see there. We could have either of them, or like say if Darby wins, we could have Darby versus Mox, which is what obviously the last how many months has been building towards, was Darby and Moxley facing off for the world title. So with hopefully Darby going over. So it's another one, it's another hard one, but do you know what, I can't back against Jon Moxley. So here's my pick, Jon Moxley for the win, and I'm sure you will have your opinions on that. So we'll move on to the very last match that we need to look at and talk about, and I did not expect this video to go over half an hour, so if you're still with me, thank you for listening. And it's going to be Kazuchika Okada versus Kenny Omega in a winner takes all to unify the AEW Continental Championship and the AEW International Championship into the inaugural AEW Unified Championship. Now this is going to be hopefully spectacular. I'm a massive fan of both of these guys. These two obviously got me into Japan, into New Japan Wrestling. Got me saturated in everything that was going on there. One of my all-time favorite matches, my top 3 matches, is Kenny Omega versus Kazuchika Okada in the 2 out of 3 falls match at Dominion. There's just so much riding on this, but like Kenny Omega said, which I didn't realise, it's been 7 years since they faced off against each other. Obviously, in that time, Kenny Omega's had a lot of time out. He was injured and out for a while, and then he come back, and then he wrestled for a bit, and then he got obviously diverticulitis, and he ended up going away again. Nearly died, come back, he's returned, he looks in great shape, but he hasn't been tested to the levels that Kazuchika Okada can test you. And in the meantime, obviously, Okada's held a Continental Championship. Was it about 18 months now? He beat obviously Eddie Kingston. He's still only the second ever champion. He then took it into the Continental Classic at the end of last year and retained it there too, and has defended it and retained it since. Okada again has had some really good matches, even recently against the likes of Speedball and stuff like that. But again, he hasn't been tested to the same level that Kenny Omega can test him. So it all remains one. Can these guys live up to their own hype? They've set such a high bar and a high standard for their matches based on the 4 that they've had previously. If you haven't checked out yet, go and check out my ranking of every Omega versus Okada match. They've had 4 matches. If I remember correctly, I haven't wrote it down. I should have done. Omega is 2, Okada is 1, and they've drawn 1 as well, time of draw. So having said that, and I feel like this won't be the last time that we're going to see these two face off against each other, as I feel like we're going to get it again in AEW. This pay-per-view, this match alone can sell pay-per-views. So I feel like it's not going to be the last time we see it. I feel like Kazuchika Okada is going to pick up the win here. I feel like Don Callis is going to help him to, so there's actually a whole reason why Don Callis is in Okada's corner, because, he's officially or unofficially joined the Don Callis family, so Don can be in his corner for this match. And I feel like, obviously, if they don't have Okada win, then what was the point in having Don Callis be in his corner? And also then in the grand scheme of things, because like AEW doesn't just ignore the history that wrestlers have. So obviously in the eyes of AEW, yes, it's the first time we're all seeing them wrestle against each other outside of New Japan. It's the first time we're seeing them wrestle each other in America, let alone AEW. But the other matches do obviously count for something in AEW. So that will tie up Kenny 2, Okada 2, 1 draw. So I feel like Kazuchika Okada gets the win and becomes the first ever AEW Unified Champion. So there you have it. That is my full predictions and breakdown of the AEW All-In pay-per-view. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you're still with me. And please do feel free to let me know your predictions in the comment section below. It'd be fun and cool to have a look at after the pay-per-view to see who is closer, me or you. Like I say, let me know in the comment section. Don't forget, as always, to subscribe to the wrestling group. And of course, just before I leave, don't forget, if you are in the UK like myself, it is 8 p.m. start time, 8 o'clock tonight. AEW All In is live. So as always, thank you for listening, and we'll see you soon.